Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Many of you I probably know from the many user group presentations, training that I've done, on-site training in general public, whatever. So I say hello to you again. Just want to warn you, this is not going to be a course or a class to replace a training class. Probably one of the worst things you can do is to try to do it that way. And you'll struggle with YouTubes and other video type presentations trying to piece it all together. And that's what my customers are telling me. We're trying to give you a good overview to show you some of the major new stuff that's out there. There's some amazing functionality, kind of get you excited about it, and let you know that the Paris developers, I work closely with them directly now, as I have for 2.5 years, and we're able to get a lot of inputs into them. They've helped us with problems and issues and things, and working with customers as well. So let's get into Webi. I'm going to highlight 4.1/4.2. The reason I do that, there's 4.1 features that were real showstoppers, and a lot of people never realized it. So kind of bring those into the fold as we go through all of this. So let me log into Webi. As we come in, we're going to start by creating a new document, and it will allow me to highlight some of the new stuff. First of all, under Preferences, I did not pop it up, but I will here for a second. Preferences are those personal settings you can make in different areas of the product so that when you log in, those settings are done automatically. One of the most critical things you're going to have to remember to do is to go to the Webi subtab, if you want to call it, and make sure you set your settings to HTML. With the advent of a 4.2, we can throw the whole Java issue out the door. How many of you have 3 and 4 different versions of Java running for each of the different legacy applications? And of course, they're all different. And of course, Webi requires a different one. Not anymore. Throw the Java component, the applets, out the door. Please make sure your users change the settings. I have customers out there that have moved to 4.2, didn't realize the settings didn't get converted over, and they were still running Java, not taking full advantage. HTML is an awesome piece of the product, the way that they've spun that off. 100% compliant with the Java. There are some hidden bonuses that I'm going to highlight as well that come along for the ride that you will not see documented. So let me come in brand new, and we'll get into this, build a document, and go through this whole process. Take a look at the menu that popped up. Quite interesting. No data source, something I've never had a use for. In many of my classes that some of you might have been in, I always said, why would you create something that's not usable? Well, guess what? We now have an awesome use of that no data source that's really, really cool. Get to that a little bit later, of course. Your standard universe, I'm pulling from a universe. Look at Excel. The Excel functionality came out in version 4.1. Yes, all the way back there, and I'm amazed how many people didn't realize that the Excel file can now be brought directly in as an additional data provider. However, there's a little caveat. The Excel file has to have been imported. We're going to talk about that later on in the presentation today. How do I bring an Excel file into the Launchpad so I can effectively use it? We'll get into that later. If you're a Bex shop, you have Bex, SAP HANA, or online, those can be turned off, by the way, through the CMC, so users don't see things like that that you don't necessarily have installed at your location. And of course, freehand SQL. There's another interesting one. Not recommended, but it's nice to have it. What if you're an old Desky user moving over and you had some old direct freehand SQL? Now we have that compatibility of moving stuff from the old Desky world over to Webi, and here it is. So we'll take advantage of the universe for right now. Go to my universe side. So here's our universe thing that we're going to run through. We'll pick the universe option, usually the best way. Excel will be brought in later. You'll notice on the standard query panel screen with version 4 over here, I've closed off the data preview window, something we requested a long time ago. With the advent of 4.2, they give us the ability to close the data preview, and up in the corner here, I can maximize now my query panel as well, which is always recommended to have that as additional bonus as well. Those were requests that I made of them a long time ago, and I was happy to see finally incorporated in to the tool as well. Here's your standard query panel. I'm running the HTML version, not the Java applets. Came up immediately. There's no delay factors anymore. Pops it right up. I closed out the data preview window now because I don't need that, but once in a while it'll open up when I need it, so I have more workspace area. Notice the little arrows, that's unique. As is always the case, if I want objects, I can double click them across, drag them across, multi-select. Also, I'll bring state in. Now let me show you an HTML specific. If I want the entire measures folder, of course, I can click them one at a time. I can drag them up one at a time. I can click on the measures folder, and this is HTML only, and it assumes I want all the objects underneath. And I'll take discount out of that one because that happens to be one that I don't want. We'll remove it from there. Take that one out. And now I've got year, state, sales, revenue, quantity sold, and margin. Not much has changed on the query filter side. There's one really neat feature called, actually I'll come up with it later on, I'll give you the name for it, but it's for prompt variance. I have my standard object operator operand. The operand window allows you to do values from a list, constant or prompts. The prompt feature is kind of nice because with the prompt properties feature, you have the ability to customize. You can make it optional, which defaults to an all selection option for that as well. You can't put specific variables in for set default values, but it can be done through the information design tool by creating a predefined prompt there on the left, and that will work for you as well. The only thing I wanted to show you, let me bring down 3 objects into this window, not necessarily that they make logical sense. Let's assume I'm going to double click to make it an OR, single versus double click with Java versus HTML. One of the unique things about HTML is when you have ands and ors, you handle a little bit differently. I've been hearing stories from customers that said, well, I'm not going to HTML because I can't do ands and ors. Oh, yes, you can. But you're all used to dragging one over the top of the other on an angle, and it puts the and out in front, and you can default it to or and so on. It's done a little differently with HTML. We've actually added that to our course content in our basic so people can have it both ways depending upon whether you're running Java or HTML. So what I'm going to do is highlight the year. Go to the right side. There's something in the very, very end called Add a Nested Filter. It adds an and, which I can make an or by double-clicking, and you drag the filter behind it. So I'm dragging the, let's drag the state behind it. We drag the year behind it, above or below. So now year and state are ANDed together with an or for the other condition there. Removing things, you just go to the left. This is unique for HTML only, that you have to use the nested filter, but I kind of like it. So versus doing the dragging and dropping. So we'll run that query. Now let's take a look at some of the real major things that have come into the product, and they're adding them in waves. I've had unique opportunities, I mentioned in introduction, that I'm able to work with the Paris developers directly and get a lot of suggestions and things in. Some of those you're going to see, I'm going to highlight as well. So on the left side is your standard available objects, your menu here, the little mini icons. That's your navigation map. If you're doing master detail reporting, the master cells become values for a hierarchical tree. Here's our input controls. We're going to show you some advanced features there. Your standard available objects here. This is for document structure and filters, similar to what you had in earlier versions. Mickey Mouse here, as I like to call them, are shared elements, a feature you're really going to like that I'll highlight later as well. Across the top, we have a data access tab in the middle. What's new? What's the same? Pretty much the same as what you're used to all along. Here's your merge, but there's something that we'll talk about later on called assign a reference. Got a really good use for that we'll get into later on. If you go to new variables, I want to highlight something real quick. You have to do a little bit more work in HTML to drag these windows and extend them out. It doesn't always keep them, but that's okay. But you have your same functions. They've added some new ones in, for example, under date and time. You'll notice there's one now called dates between right there. There's also one called time between. Brand new functions 4.2, I believe SP4. Your local variables on the left and on the right. There's one called values button. So if you're defining an if then else with an in list, and inside the in list parentheses, you have to type in the values with double quotes around them, separated by a semicolon. The values takes care of it. That was also a 4.1 feature that many people were not familiar with. Another neat late 4.1 feature that came out was the help feature. Notice time between. If I click more on this function, it gives me the extended advanced help. I don't have to move my window out of the way. And it gives you your 2/3 of the window is what the specific function you're working with. The 1/3 is an overall master index across everything. That's really cool. And I like to use that help window to help me guide me through, especially a lot of the special functions that are there. Let's take the year function. Let's go to the famous analysis tab. Analysis is the most popular tab of all. It's got some neat bells and whistles, and where you're going to spend most of your time. If you work with the product at all, you know what I'm talking about. Your typical breaks, groups, sorts, local filters, over on functions, your sums, and so on are all there. So let's highlight the year column. Let's apply a break. And a break kind of breaks it into subgroups, in this case based on each year all the way down the line. Very nice feature. You have a feature called Manage Breaks introduced in version 4 that allows us to effectively manage those. Value-based, that's a no 4.2 SP5. Yes, I'm running Service Pack 5 right now. The old value-based break, if I turn it on, I select my value. It allows me to force a break on certain values only. That's kind of a nice feature. And you might recognize that as an old Desky carryover. It's nice to see that as well. Start on a new page, avoid page breaks, repeat the header on every page. All options available for each and every break. Really nice. Sorting, if you want to do sorting, you know how that works. The advanced button, however, is how you do a custom sort. When you do an advanced sort, you have to do an add here to pick the object that you want to do the sort on, in this case, state. And then you have to hit the values button, very typical flow that you're all used to. In HTML, you have to use the arrows to move these up and down. And if you're a Java user, you know what I'm talking about. In Java, let us drag them up and down. Here, I would just have to use the arrows, and that's all I would do in order to do the custom sort that way. All right, so again, that's still functional. Functions the same as what it was before, and it's nice to have those as well. Let's take the sales revenue and do a sum over here. And we're going to do the quantity sold, and we're going to do a sum also. And of course, because I have breaks turned on, I'm going to have subtotals and grand totals. Remember the old adage that I teach? Breaks first, calcs last. Very, very important way to do things. All right. So your sum, your sort, your breaks. Let's talk about grouping. Another 4.1 feature. It's amazing. There are 3 features introduced in 4.1 that business objects never thought to even push or advertise or put a marketing blitz out. One of them I already, actually 2 of them I covered. Excel as a data provider. Number 2, the use of the values button when you have an in list where you have to put multiple values inside the parentheses. That was an additional one. And then the grouping. Now the grouping is an awesome feature. And most people still don't even see it even in 4.2. Let me show you how it works. It's very intuitive. When I look at features, I look at it from your end at different levels as a light, medium, or power user, and what would be intuitive to you. And that's the feedback I will often give to the Paris guys saying, you know, you could have done this or could have done that. They're trying to be very responsive as well. So let's take the state as an example. I go up and I hit the group button, and it brings up a list of all the unique values by default. Then I go up and I rename this column, and I'm going to rename it region because it's no longer going to be state because I'm dynamically grouping these together. If you're grouping customers into different areas or regions, here's a very good way to regroup them and see what the effects are on your numbers in your report. And what you do is you put a description in, and then what you do is you check box the ones you want to work with. I just want the first 2, although I could have added Texas. And I say, okay, let's group those together. And it says, give me a name for those. And we'll call that first group West Coast. And we'll do an okay with it. Let's group those all together. We'll take DC and Massachusetts and New York, not all contiguous. They don't have to be. We will group those together. Maybe those we'll call the Northeast, just to have a unique name for those as well. And I take, let's take Texas and Florida. They're scattered all over as well. We'll group those together. We'll call that Southeast. And then we'll move into the Illinois or the Illinois standalone. Now, if you're an old Desky user, it used to be difficult. You had to jump through a couple extra hoops to do single value. Now Webi says you want to do a single value and leave it alone, don't check it, and it'll show up as Illinois. Now, I want it into a separate group here that I'm going to define right now, which we'll call Midwest. So even single values are easy to do. And of course, oftentimes in a training class, I'll get a question that comes up, but what about new ones? Look at this, ungrouped values. How would I like to handle those? I want them automatically grouped. Give me a name for that group. And now there's a catch-all called others. How cool is that? How intuitive. If I make a mistake, I can merely check DC, do a move to, or ungroup it. Look how easy they are to manage. They've done an incredible job with this function. And now they are going to be grouped together right on the fly. And there they are. Notice it created a local variable. It's a group variable versus a normal variable. If I double click on it, instead of opening up the variable editor, as you're all used to doing in Webi, it opens up the Manage Group window instead and allows me to make the changes along the way. Now, because this is a variable, it can be used throughout the entire document like any other local variable. The difference is you let Webi do all the work and you took all the credit because you did these on the fly, quick, fast, and easy. So let's go back to Manage Groups. This is the other way you can do it. You can move things around. Now think about this. Everybody said, well, that's kind of cool. Oh, it's a lot cooler than you think. Here's why. What if I wanted to do this as part of the if then else expression and I wanted California, Colorado? I have to supply the old value and the new. So if my state is in the list California, Colorado, then West Coast, else if, and you go all that extra work for all the old values and all the new values. Not with groupings. It shows you all the distinct values. And then you just play the little checkbox group or move to or ungroup, and it's that easy to manage. This is an amazing function, extremely powerful. If you're in healthcare, one of my favorites, 2 examples in healthcare. I had one recently where they were looking at changing the diagnostic codes and renaming or regrouping them some way. So as they changed them, the numbers in the report instantly changed, reflected by what the new group was, instantly. Another one, patient reports. They kick out a patient report by patient name. The first patient was entered 5 different spellings. They come in 5 different times in this long list. All they got to do is 5 check marks, hit the group. They're grouped together right on the fly. So it's good for that. Customer reports or customer entries came in as well. To ungroup them, it's nothing more than highlight them all, ungroup them as a whole, do an OK on it. And now they're ungrouped and we're back to normal. What an awesome, intuitive, easy to use feature. So many people don't realize how powerful that is, but it's a great feature to have. A couple other little things that are kind of neat. Notice the year column. If I hit the local filter over here on the left, it opens up the local filter window. Very different than version 3. I can and OR these and so on. It now supports null values, 4.1 SB6, introduce null values in query filters, local filters, and input controls as another option. So you can add in different filters. Maybe I only want 17 and 18 in here. So I want to add 2 of those in, okay? So I've got them filtered on it. And I can also hide a column. What if I said hide the state column? If you know there's a right click for that shortcut drop-down menu, I can say let's hide that column. It's extended in 4.2 to allow you to hide more than just dimensions, but measures as well. I hide the column, and now you don't see it. And if you go to the left side under Document Structure and Filter, this is a really cool thing over here. Let me show you this. And you open it up all the way down the line. This is the document structure. It shows you in italics anything that's hidden, and of course any local filters within that block on that report tab. That's kind of that's an extension of what we had in the old Webi days as well, but a lot of people don't realize it's there. Of course, I can go in and do a hide and show hidden objects, but then it shows all of them. Then I'd have to go back in and rehide those values as well. All right. So some really cool features that have been introduced there. Conditional formatting runs very well, though it's a little more memory intensive, but it's a pretty cool feature. Maybe in a future webinar, I can show you how you can create master detail reports with conditional formatting and dynamically insert red, yellow, green stoplights. Really cool stuff. Very easy to do in Webi. Future presentation topics for us as well. So I can go into here and I can go into my filter buttons and say, you know what, I want to see all the data. So why don't we just delete them all? Very easy maintenance and so on along the way. While we're in there, let me show you something else. Let's go back over to the Data Access tab, and there's something called Assign Reference. You're going to see more and more crystal-like functionality being integrated into the product. That's what's happening with each and every new service pack. They add some more in, and I think of it as being crystal-like functionality coming in. One of the things that's always been difficult to do is to grab a specific cell. For example, see the grand total, 44 million? What if I'd like to store that over here as a variable, as a single value? Then I could use it in the denominator of a calculation to come up with averages and counts and so on. Not easy to do up until now. You got to be very good using those good old context operators, for each, for all, and in, to capture subtotals or grand totals. Watch this cool little feature. I highlight the 44 million cell, and it could have been the 693 here. It doesn't matter. But I highlighted the 44 million. I go up and say assign a reference to it. And I'm going to call it grand total sales revenue. It has a nice description box that's been enhanced throughout all of the product in 4.2, including local variables. I do an OK for it. Now notice under references, I have a single value, a scalar value, but it's a signed reference cell. I go down and grab the grand total for quantity sold. And I do an assign reference to that one. And I call that one grand total QTY sold, just like that. We'll do an OK on that one. And now they're available to me on the left side. I can drag those right onto the report over here onto the right side as a standalone column if I want. Obviously, I'm going to have overflow issues if it's too big. I can auto-fit it as well. But what's nice about it is I can do calculations. I can go to variables and say right-click new. Let's create a new one. And we'll call it just test. And what we'll do is we'll take the grand total, we'll take quantity sold up here, divided by sales revenue, some type of arithmetic calculation, not the most logical one, but it works. And so now I have a new variable called test, and if I wanted, I could drag test out here, and basically it's the one divided by the other. Not the best example, but you get to see how it works. You now have the ability to pluck off individual cell values They show up as references. What they are basically is an extension of a variable. They are fully functional to be used in any other calculations. They can be displayed by themselves and so on. They're very useful. Let me add a second report tab on the bottom here. And what if I just had on that one state, let's just say state, sales revenue quantity sold. And maybe I decided to put the grand total of sales revenue off to the side as a single value just to be displayed. So I'm showing you how you can use it. Auto fitting is always a challenge on these, but I was hoping I could get along the edge nevertheless. Now, here's an interesting thing. You say, well, where did it come from? What are its roots? If you do a right click on it, you can say, show me the reference cell. It takes you back to the report tab to the specific cell to see exactly where it is. This is an awesome feature. And before you ask that inevitable question that I know you're going to ask, if I were to filter these and this shifted up, that grand total cell will not lose its position. It will still pull from that same value. It might be smaller because you might have applied a local filter, but it will still reflect accurate data with whatever's there. Obviously, there's also a sense of responsibility that comes with this. You can't go now and delete report tab number 1 and expect these to work. It will actually, when you reference them, will throw an error. It'll give you an error message that it can't find it now. So you have to make sure you manage your reference cells effectively and don't get rid of the tab and the block that it's coming from. Otherwise, you're blowing a hole in it, and it won't be able to trace it back through. So for logical reasons, keep that in mind as well. Of course, I can delete these out if I wanted to, say I don't need that anymore. And I can take this one out here as well. What an awesome, awesome feature. I was really excited about it. It's simple. It's like a local variable. It is a local variable, but it's a scalar value, single value. And it's only single value. Before somebody asks, can I take these two cells together? No. But I could have taken the 3,852 value and pulled that specifically in as a reference cell. That's how fine-tuned it is, how granular it can be as part of that as well. So that is a really awesome feature to have. Another great feature, what if you have a situation, let's take this test one out because that was calculated by virtue of the two I just eliminated. So I didn't clean up as I should have, and I saw it and got rid of it there. What if I decided I wanted to save all of this as kind of like a default report block and make it available to all my users where they could pull it in from somewhere, drop it onto a report tab, and not have to build a query and then run the query to get to the report. So you can almost look at it as, why don't I create a standard 10-column report, 4 or 5 dimensions, maybe a bunch of measures, maybe a bunch of local variable calculations as well that you also want to share. Those really should be built into the universe later on, but they're not. She said, well, I'm going to build a 10, 12 column report. Some of the columns will be coming from what already exists in the universe, and some will be local variables. And I'm going to save this out there somewhere and allow my users to bring it back in. Let's do exactly that. It's another new feature. It's on the Report Elements tab, and it's called Shared Element. It's done at the block level. So I do a right click here, and I'm going to go to linking. I want to save this as a shared element. Now, where do you save it? Well, good old repository. As you know, with the advent of version 4, we have a My Favorites and a Public Folders area to put these things into. If I save it in a public folder, this block, reference block that I'm creating right now, the shared element, it's available to everybody. If I do it locally, it's only available to me. I'm going to do it locally only for example's sake. I'll stick it in reporting. We'll call it New Shared Element Demo for demo purposes, and I will save that. And now on the left side here, you'll see something, the Mickey Mouse ears I call them. It's the shared element icon. I open it up and I say browse and show me what you got out there. And it says, okay, under my favorites, you have a bunch of these under the tilde Webi file that are out there. And under the reporting one, you have the one you just created called New Shared Element Demo, which is that block. So let me simulate another user coming in and using it. The way I'm going to do that is as the same user, I'm going to go to Home and open up a brand new Webi section, another Webi document right inside. So this would be no different than a new user coming in separate from me right now. So what they're going to do is we're going to select New, but we're going to pick No Data Source and do an OK, and an empty document comes up. All right, and this is user number 2. They're going to go out to the shared elements and they're going to browse. They're going to say, what do I have available to me? And security will control it as well. So you get security on the folders based on different users and so on for departmental things will apply. All you do is drag it right out and drop it anywhere on the report tab, and game, set, match, you are done. Watch what happens. There it is. If you go back to the query panel, as you would expect it to do, as it has to do, it must do it. It actually brought the query along for the ride. What that means is, let me just rerun it to refresh it. You need to be careful. What do I mean? If you already had a document and you drop that shared element to the right side of it, it's now going to have two queries. May not be what you want. If you've been through any of my training, you know one of my famous many best practice phrases is you don't want multiple queries in the same document against the same universe when one query will do the job. So you want to train your users, if you're bringing in a block to use it as a building block to start with, make sure you have that no document tab, and then you won't have two queries associated with that same document you just created. Now, here's another thing you need to watch out for. So now here it is, okay? So now I say what's currently being used, and it shows me it right here, new shared element. So what happens if the original user now does another save as over the top of that shared element and they replace it? How does it affect you and me? Here I am. I'm user number 2 now, the one that just dragged it in. What if I had just taken all this time and effort after doing it to format this, to apply a break, maybe a sort, maybe a filter, maybe some formatting and so on? If I come back in and choose the update option, it will take the latest version and overlay it right on top of this block, and all that nice fancy stuff I did, flush it down the toilet. It's gone. So what you need to think about is using the unlink. In most cases, you want that. I brought it over as a shared element. Now I'm going to unlink it so it's now standalone, and I never have to worry again. But for many of my users, they like this as an alternative way for an end user to build a report by not starting with the query panel, but finding a shared block, or shared element out here that's a block that they can drag on and drop it out there. You can have a whole library full of those if you wanted to as well. All right, great new feature. Keep that in mind as well. I'm getting too many tabs out here, as you can see, but if you notice over on where our the available objects are located, if you right-click over a measure, you have a new feature called Change Type. Number, I believe, is 15 maximum size. Decimal, I believe, and I always have to look it up in my notes and whatever, will give you a number all the way up to, I believe, 42 positions wide. So very, very large whole number. Never had that before. I made a request to the developers if they could add a third option called Format, so I could format sales revenue here, and then every single report tab that I drag it onto, it's already formatted. There's something that they're looking at right now as well. So this is pretty cool for measures. Numbers up to 15, decimal, I believe it's 42, and you can have large numbers instead of smaller number as well. It's done a really, really nice job with that. Let's stop for a second. Are there any questions that you might have out there? Kelly, any that have come in so far?
I just have one question here. What is the difference between using the Applets versus HTML version of Webi?
When you're using the Java version, you have to have the correct version of Java installed on your PC. Has to be the correct version. You might have 3 or 4 other legacy applications running Java, so you've got 4 or 5 different flavors of Java running. You got to make sure Webi is pointing to the correct one, and it's slower in all ways, shapes, and forms. By going to HTML, Java is gone. It's no longer in the picture. And it runs quicker, faster. And by the way, there's another huge bonus. You can use any browser that you want. As you know, we were really kind of restricted down to Internet Explorer only because of the fact that Chrome and some of the other browsers have all dropped support of Java. So that will no longer be an issue. The thing is, when you go to 4.2, make sure you move it to HTML, change the setting and preferences, run 100% HTML. All right. Really good thing to do for that as well. Hopefully that answered the question. All right, let me come in brand new again. I like to do separate each time to kind of separate things out a little bit and review. Here's my good old new button again. Let's go back to Universe. A couple other things I want to show you that are available that a lot of people are not available. May or may not have been considered enhancements, but things that people just didn't realize were there. Okay, so let's do the following. Let me bring over year and quarter, and I'll bring over all the measures. And I'll bring over state for use later on, just so I have it. And we'll run that query. And it'll populate a report for us. And I'm going to take some columns out of it that I don't want, but I just wanted to gen it all up. Okay. Here's your 4-way arrow for moving things around. You have your unlimited undos. That's a nice feature to have as well. Let me show you another neat feature that's been around in 4 for a while that people aren't really aware of. Let's take year, quarter, sales revenue, quantity sold. Yeah, I love multi-selecting. It's open virtually everywhere that you work inside of Business Objects. We'll drag it a second time over here, except in this report, we'll drag quarter out of it. And let me get this auto fit. I have found that I have better luck with IE in 4.2 HTML than I have with Chrome. It seems to behave a little differently with the drag and drops and personal things that I've noticed. I have other people that use Chrome and they like it, so it might be just a version number, who knows. But I'm running pure HTML, and right now I'm in IE. But it really shouldn't matter which browser you use. Any of them are all now supported because we're not running the Java version. You don't want to run Java. You want to get out of that world, so you don't have to worry anymore about Java versions and all that. That goes, all the headaches that go with it as well. Trying to get my auto fit. There's another way to do it. We'll just get this to fit up. Right-click, format cell is always a neat way to get around this problem. Pick auto fit width and height, some of my little secrets, and automatically fits it as well. What if I took the one on the left and I said, you know, let's use the good old turn into feature. Let's turn it into a pie chart. And we're going to take the pie chart. We're going to do something interesting with this, something very interesting with this. We're going to show you how to build a simple dashboard. It's amazing. It's been out for a while, but most people had no clue about this ability to integrate things in so nicely. If you're using different visualization tools, Tableau, Power BI, whatever, those are great for visualizations, but not for reporting and a lot of basic stuff that we're doing. So this allows me that extension. I can have the best of both worlds. And by the way, there are now product plugins available in the market so that universes can read Tableau and Power, or I should say Tableau and Power BI can read universes. So keep that in mind as well. Now, this is really cool. Let me go to my Report Elements tab. Notice I have a pie chart on the left and two reports on the right. And I'd like to link them together. And I want to make this a dashboard so I can click on a pie slice and watch all my numbers magically change. Very simple to do. A for feature from way back. Always highlight the block that you want to be the driver. And then if you go up under linking and you say, let's add a linked element, you must have a common dimension or dimensions for obvious reasons. And I said, we'll do a single object. We'll do a year. We'll do a next. We'll next through it. And we'll link it to block number 1 and block number 2. And I want to link it to itself, or it'll behave funny, but it'll work, but it's funny. Now, when I go over here, I said, let's click on year. And I clicked on 15. I click on, what's that one? Whatever it is, 18, 17, 16. And as I do that, all the values change. Let me open up the input control feature to clear the filters back out. And look what you got. Awesome, awesome feature. The ability to link things together. And you can daisy chain them. I could have had this in turn linked to something over on the right side where I click on a pie slice here, click on that particular year, and it does the automatic linking across as an interactive dashboard as well. What's amazing is how easy and how simple it is. All you need is a common dimension, one or more. You are good to go. Let me go back to the query panel for a second. Let me add in, I already brought in state. I want to bring in city and store name. Show you another amazing feature that people aren't aware of. Came out, I believe, in SP4. It's called Cascading Input Controls. And many of you are going to gobble this feature right up. It's just amazing. Let me do this. Let me go over to Add a Report tab. And what we'll build into this report tab is we'll take state, city, and store name, and sales revenue, quantity sold. We'll drag them all across. And now what I'd like to do is create an input control for state, one for city, one for store name. As you know, input controls are things like radio buttons, checks boxes, list boxes, and they're basically local filters for end users. We're going to show you a really cool feature. So I go to my analysis tab and I select input control, and I want to do it for state. And I want it to be a combo box, single value only, but I can do it with a list box, and it does work. That's your typical layout for input controls. I'm assuming you're familiar with that. And I'm going to link it. Now, this is a feature that came about at the request of not only me, but my user community that I work with and train. Requests from people like you that came to me and said, we need this. One of the biggest problems you would have prior to this version is if you created an input control for one report tab, it wouldn't carry across. If you created a second report tab that was similar, you had to create it all over again. And now in version 4, if you duplicate a tab where you've created one here, it automatically carries it across. Well, I want my input control to do the entire document. So every single tab, if it has a state on it and I change the input control value, ripple through all the tabs and not just one. That is cool. Okay. So what it creates on the left side here is my input control for state. Then I'm going to do another input control again. This time we'll do it for city. And we'll next through it and we'll finish it out. And then we'll do another input control for store name. Pick store name, we'll next through it. I'll make it the single combo box, and next through it, finish it up, and away we go. Here's the age-old problem we all have. We all know cascading has never been great in Webi. With the IDT, it works very well now. But here I come as an end user, and I pick California. I was just teaching out there a short time ago, so I'll just pick California as my choice. Then when I go down to the cities, I get all the cities. I don't want that. I don't want that. I only want the cities for the state I selected. Webi says, too bad. These are not cascaded, okay? So what do you mean? Nope, they're not set up for that. So all I have to do as an end user is this. I've got them all defined. I go up to here, and I say group them together. And it says, what do you want to group? I want input controls to group these automatically together, okay? So now what happens is this, that we're done, that's it. Believe it or not, that's all the magic you had to do right there. So I drop down arrow and I say, we'll pick California, or Colorado in this case. Let me pick California, I like that one better, values. Then when I click the down arrow, whoa, I'm not grouped properly here. That's not gonna work. There's state, city, store. Let me reset that because it should have automatically filtered. It looked a little odd when it came up. So I got my state, my city, and those. So let's go back to the group button again. It's not showing that one on there. There's something out of whack that it doesn't like. There's my state. When all else fails, we're just going to delete all of them. Recreate them again in case something got out of whack. Don't usually have that, but sometimes it will. Clean these input controls out. We'll get rid of city. We'll get rid of store name. And we'll just recreate it real quick to go back through them. Gives you an idea what the typical flow is like. So we'll create our first input control for state. There it is. We'll next through it. We'll next through it. And we'll next through it. I mixed and matched current report and entire document. That's what confused it. I don't usually do that. That's what caused that to happen. We'll do another input control for that one real quick. For city, we'll next through it. We'll next through it. And we'll finish it up. And then we'll do another input control for store name. Really cool. This is how simple it is. There's no data mapping at all anywhere. So many people often tell me in training, well, where's the catch? There isn't one. So there they all are. We saw how they did behave. Now when I hit the group button, it allows me to do all three. Now when I come in and I pick the state, for example, I click the down arrow and I say, oh, got to finish it up first. Would be nice. Select the down arrow. And I pick California. I click the down arrow here. All I see are the California cities for the city of LA. All I see are the store names for that one. Game, set, match. I'll tell you the biggest group going crazy over that's healthcare. They have a hospital, a department, and they want to only see the doctors that exist for that department within that hospital. They go crazy over it. Here's your reset to reset them back to all, and away you go. You, as an end user, can set those simple input controls up. And it does work with Listbox where you could have selected multiple values. It's not limited to combo. Yes, I've tested it all ways, shapes, and forms, and you saw what happened there as well. And again, really, really awesome feature. By the way, on the Documents tab, I didn't highlight this earlier. Let me bounce back real quick. There's a new recycle bin. Yes, for you as an end user, full recycle bin. Is that nice? Oh, yeah. Something we've all been waiting for a long while. So that's now available for us, cascading. There's enhanced charting that I'm not going to get into today. A lot of geo mapping or whatever. I have an entire presentation for future I could do on that one. What I want to get into now, the big topic is it'll be multiple data providers, but specifically dealing with Excel. Every week, I probably get more questions from users than I've ever gotten before, literally weekly, on Excel files and how to handle them and how to update them. In most cases, you have a broken report. The report got broken. You said, how did that happen? Because with Excel files, they have a very simple process you follow. You don't follow the process, it corrupts it. It's very easy. So let's go out there, let's do this. Let's go out there, create a new query. We're going to actually do bring in a couple of universes first, then the Excel file is the third component. We'll talk about that. So more of a practical use. I like to do it this way for a couple different reasons. And we're going to bring in the following: quarter, month, and sales revenue quantity sold. And we'll run it. And you do have the ability to rename your query tabs. I'll do that a little bit later. First report comes up, you said, big deal. What's the magic for there? There isn't any. I go back to the query panel. That nice little 4 shortcut came on 4.1. And I go up to add a second query here from a universe. And I pick eFashion again. I'm about to violate one of my fundamental principles. I'm going to create a second query against eFashion again with quarter and month and margin and discount. Should have never done it this way. But I did it because many of you have to do it this way. If I tried to get them all at once, your universe has certain holes in it or gaps, and there's joins missing, and you get incompatible object messages. So sometimes you have to do multiple sweeps. Down on the bottom, you can rename your tabs. You have to do a rename only in HTML. And the second one is eFashion number 2. And I'll rename the first query tab eFashion number 1, just for consistency's sake. You know I'm big on that. eFashion number 1. Notice the run queries. I don't have to run the first one. I've already run it. It's done. It hasn't changed. We'll run query number 2. We'll allow it to get inserted into its own separate report tab for verification. And now, lo and behold, we now have report tab 1 and report tab 2. We don't care about those. We're going to add one to combine them and get rid of those later on. Notice how things are arranged. You never want them alphabetic. You always want them by query. Always. Year will take quarter, month, sales revenue quantity sold in query 1, along with margin and discount from query 2. Love that multi-selecting. And bingo, here we go. Got an obvious problem. I brought 2 sets of numbers together. Notice the auto merge is off in version 4. That is the right thing. It should be off. You control the merging. Don't let it do it for you. If you go to your document properties, you can make it automatic, and I don't think that's a good thing to do at all. So we're missing a merge. We have to merge those 2 queries together because they're not currently linked. Notice that. So how do I do that? Real simple. On data access, there's a merge button. And I select the quarter in the quarter, and I do an OK, and then I do the month in the month as well. But there's another way. I could go over here and do a quarter and do a right click and a merge. An alternative way you've always had. But there's a third way in HTML. In HTML, instead of Java, everything's just identical. I highlighted to do quarters. I hit the merge button. It doesn't even bother giving me the menu. It just merged them automatically. You don't even have to go through the menu. Same with month. I highlight month. I highlight month. I hit the merge button. It doesn't waste the time that Java would bringing it up. All my 2 queries are merged together at the quarter month level, and everybody is happy. As a 4.2, you can also merge on a local variable. So if one of my queries had month number and one of them had month name, we could do a future presentation where I'll show you that with Excel files. I can define a new variable. One of the 2 can be remapped from 1 to Jan, 2 to Feb, and merge, or vice versa. It now supports merging on local dimensions. Got some classic examples that we do in some of our best practice guides as well. So far so good. Nothing magical. You got to see how things are broken out. But now we're going to go bring in that magical Excel file and talk about how to do it, what to do, what not to do. We'll bring it in from Excel. Now, to bring in an Excel file, it has to have already been imported into My Favorites or Public. Has to. How would I do that? Let me cancel back out. All right. So if you went back to your Documents tab, what you would have to do is highlight the folder you want it to go in, for example, reporting. Go up to New Local Document, and you import the Excel file, and it drops it into somewhere out there. Add it, and simply, I've already done it, so I don't need to, but that's what it would do. And there's one I had imported in an earlier time. Keep this rule in mind. You create the Excel file outside of Business Objects and bring it in. You update the Excel file outside of Business Objects, and you bring it in a replace mode, not in an import mode. That's one of the tricky things that you have to watch out for. We'll talk more about it a little bit later as well. So if I go back to New Document here again, and I said, let's add a query. I don't want to add a query. Here's what I want to do. I want to add from Excel. And what I'm going to do is I have an Excel file already sitting out there in one of the other folders called Excel Files. It's eFashion right there. Make sure your Excel file is nothing more than data silos. Title data, left to right all the way across. Cool window comes up. Okay, it's the custom data provider. We used to call it the PDP, personal data provider, in earlier versions. Here it all is. First row contains column names. If you have multiple sheets, then you have to create multiple queries to bring them in one at a time. Nothing magical there. And it creates a pseudo query. This isn't really a true query panel because it's not a universe. It's a pseudo. Notice my month's incorrectly defined. So I'm going to take the month, and I'm going, actually I got more in there than I wanted for that one. That's an updated version. So we'll change that month to a dimension. Okay, we'll run the queries as is. I'm actually going to take the month name out of it because I don't need it. I use this for another example. I have a different version of eFashion I usually bring in, so we'll run it. So it's running all the queries. So now here's my report number 3 where we combine the results of the first 2 queries together. Notice sales revenue, quantity, sold, margin, and discount. So now we're going to take the projected revenue, stick it along the right edge, drop it into here. and stick the actual revenue in there, and along the right edge, grand totals. Grand totals or subtotals are like neon flashing lights. It's telling you you have not merged your common dimensions together, so they can't link together. Same problem you'd have in Excel or any other tool. So how do we do that? You say, well, that's easy enough to fix. We merge them. So we go to the data access, we hit the merge button, say, well, let's merge the quarters first. I take quarter, quarter, and quarter, and nothing happens. It's grayed out. You do the same thing for month. You can click along here and do it that way. Same identical problem. What's different? Oh, I've already done a merge. So now I'm doing a add to merge. And Webi says, nope, got to do that different. So what you do here is you go to the left side, highlight quarter, the parent quarter. Its technical name is called the merge dimension quarter. It's the parent. Hold your control key down and the quarter from query 3 that we're adding in. And if it's the correct combo, it allows you to do an add to merge, and it merges them instantly. Then I go back and pick the merge dimension month and the month from query number 3. Right click, add to merge. Now it's merged and all my numbers line up all the way down the line. Look at that. Took care of the problem. All right. What you need to be aware of is, how do I update the Excel file? That's where most people are running into problems. Okay. I talked about creating it outside, importing it in. You update it outside and you organize it in. What do I mean by that? The report, doesn't matter where the report is, whether it's open or not, whether I saved it or not, doesn't matter. Here it sits. You go out to your Documents tab. You find the one you want to update. And here it is, eFashion. And you do a right click, organize, and there's an Organize button that comes up. You do what's called an Organize Replace File. This is how you update an Excel file that's already been imported. Do not update it inside the Launchpad, or you can throw it away. It's toast. It's basically corrupted. You have to do a replace file. It brings up a browse window. You say, I want to replace it with, and you go out. You're probably going to have it under the same name so you don't lose track of it. And you do a replace on the bottom, which I'm not going to do here, but that would replace it and overlays it. And it's that simple. Now, all you got to do is go back to your document, open it up, and do a refresh. However, here's a little caveat. If the file was nothing more than an updated Excel file, no additional structural changes, you can go right here, even if the document's already open, and I can hit the refresh button to refresh the document, no problems. But if I brought in the Excel file and somebody changed it, they inserted 2 new columns in the middle, stuck one at the end, maybe they removed one of the columns that you had already referenced in your report, what you have to do is go back to the query panel, edit it, and you have to specifically run the query associated with the Excel file. If you don't, you will corrupt it, and your report is junk. You have to throw it away. That's the big problem you have to watch out for. So Excel files are created and imported. They're updated and organized, replaced to bring them back in. That's the rule that you must follow, or you will continue to have problems with Excel. Excel files are great. I can think of 3 or 4 classic uses of an Excel file that are very good. Maybe in a future webinar, we can do one just on Excelling it. I've got some great examples where I get into some specifics. Excel files can be used as a filter file. I can bring it in as a 1-column file, a list of customer IDs, and one of my other queries in my report can point to that and use that single column as a dynamic filter file. I can use it as a bridge. What if I have incompatible columns in 2 different universes? I can build an Excel file that has both, join one to the left, one to the right, combines it all together, and everything works exactly as it should. Other things I did not talk about were comments. You can insert comments along the way. There's enhanced charting. There's just no time today. I wanted to show you prompt variants, but that would have to be a future one as well, just because there's a lot of different options. But just to kind of highlight some of the key things that are going on. The handout that I'll provide you with is going to be broken out. It's a 1-pager, and it lists on the left side the version 1 and version 2 significant enhancements. On the right side, we list where we have it in our various course material. Be aware. Everybody has this misconception that all the enhancements are in the advanced. No. We have major features in basic, intermediate, and advanced because they're introduced at all levels of the product. So you want to be aware of that, not to skip around courses, saying, well, there's nothing new in basic, intermediate, it's only in the advanced. Not true. Not true at all. There's a lot of other neat things that I'd love to be able to do for time's sake, but we just don't have it. But hopefully you got a really good taste of a lot of the new stuff, and they're continually pushing new enhancements out, and I'm continually sending them requests and all. It's very unique having a pipeline into the developers. We send in, where you submit a ticket for a problem, we submit an email to our support staff, and we usually get an answer in an hour. So they're very good. If you have some technical issue, that you can't get resolved, send it over to me. You never know. We've been able to help get connected up and had some patches that were put in directly from some things that they encountered along the way as well. So I'm going to stop at this point, kind of open it up for any last minute questions. Kelly, if you have any there.
Someone had asked about the Excel capabilities, but I think you answered that pretty succinctly.
Yep. I have a more specific example that if we do a dedicated webinar just for Excel, I can show you all the different bells and whistles and actually do an update to show you exactly how easy that is to do. You gotta remember though, you create it outside, import it, you update it outside, and bring it in that way. So got to be very careful.
Just to follow up with a couple of related courses, you can see those on your screen there. In a couple of days, we will share with you a recording to this in case you wanted to review anything, the handout that Michael just referenced, as well as the evaluation. And if there were any other webinars that you would like to see as a spin-off of today's presentation, we would love to hear about it. Michael and ProTech are always available to do some custom types of presentations for your teams as well. So feel free to get in touch with us. If there aren't any other questions, then we will wrap up for today and be on the lookout for that email here by the end of the week. Thank you very much to Michael Ward, and thank you to all of you for participating today. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.